Hey everyone, my name is Saf. You're watching Rayon Tech TV, and today in this session we are continuing on UI UX development series for Appian. Today I have a special component for you that is Editable Grid, which is most prominently used in all the applications that you see to display the data. The data can be of any source, any valid source. For example, a common source is like a record type data or data coming from a database. Now, in order to use and implement a grid, we are having a grid layout function here. It is a interface component in Appian. So before diving deep into the practical implementation, let's understand the function as it and its parameters. So the function says with some basic input parameters as label instructions. Label is what the grid has to be with the heading. And then we are having the instructions, the supplemental text, as we have discussed in many other previous examples about the label and instructions. Header cells, like what will be the configuration of your header cell. So when you are dropping a grid or when you're designing the grid, so the top row is the heading, right? Just like we see in the Excel, we are having the heading. So we are having the header cells for that. Next, we are having the column configuration. So on the basis of the column configuration, there is a sub function for this parameter input function parameter. We need a sub function for this, that is a grid layout column config. So in this function, we just provide the configuration for the number of columns that we have defined, and for each column we can define the width and various other configurations that we can see later on this child function. Rows, how many number of rows that you want to populate with respect to the grid. So basically what we do, we use a bank grid row layout with loop, because yes, we know we have a source of data and we have to iterate that data with respect to, for every row we have to create a grid row layout so that the data in the row can be populated. So that is rows. Then we are having validations. Like, do you have any specific validations that you want to pop up with respect to the data errors on the grid? Validation group. Now, this is something with respect to button. It will be good to understand with respect to button. So when you want to group this grid with a particular validation group, then you can bind that validation group on a particular submit button so that it can be of same button and it can be grouped together. Next, is it selectable or not? So if by default it is false, if it is selectable, then you can put it as true. Selection disabled, then if selection is disabled on all rows, so you can make it true or false because the input type is as boolean. We can see later examples of them. Selection required, so determines if a selection is required to submit the form. So by default it is false as of now. Again, the boolean input fields, then we are having a selection variable. So if you make a selection, then what kind of value you have to select from that selected row, and what the selected item that you have selected, where you have to save. So you have to provide a target selection variable. You can use a bank save in a local variable or whatever you want to do. There are further more configurations, for example add row link. So if you are allowing the grid to dynamically add a new row, then you can use add row link, and it is using child function called a bank dynamic link. Total count, do a total count number of rows of data displayed in the grid. So it is a number integer field. Empty grid message. So if you are having a particular source which does not have a data, so in that case, what kind of message you want to pop up? Help tooltip. So just like every other interface component, if you want a editable grid, having a question mark field on the corner, like a question mark thing, and you hover your mouse, and then you want to see a help text, then you can provide a help tooltip. Then label position, whatever the label that you defined on the top, what kind of position that you want to give to that label, you can choose. Do you have any kind of condition, like do you want to showcase the grid on the basis of a particular variable, that if this variable is not null, then only show the grid, or if this member is a user of this group, then only show the grid, as don't. So you can put visibility conditions. Shade alternate rows, it is a visual UI parameter, like the grid can be plain or alternatively shaded. So you can choose the grid shading. Spacing, it is again a UI like parameter where you can choose the denser spacing or standard spacing. Height can be by default auto, or you can define a fixed height for the grid. Border style you can choose standard or light, and selection style also. What when you select, do you allow the selection to be a checkbox or row highlight? So by default it is a checkbox, or you can choose row highlight for making it more aesthetic. Then you are having a row header, index of the column to be used as a row header. Okay. So for every row we can provide a row header, like announce the row it will announce the each row header when navigating. So it is related to accessibility text. So when a blind person, a person with or a person with a low vision will touch on the screen for a particular row item, so it will announce the row header count. Then we are having accessibility text, as you know, as additional text to be announced by screen readers, used only for accessibility and produces no visible change. So it is just telling the interface component that yes, this is something as an editable grid, and you can provide the accessibility text for the same. There are other additional components with respect to this documentation when it comes to editable grid. Editable grid's performance depends on what type of data you are sourcing and if it is coming from a record type, so whether it is synced or not synced, what kind of you know implementations you are doing with that grid depends a lot. So there are more configurations when it comes to performance of a grid. There are furthermore actions that you can do. You can do inline edit, inline add, inline delete, inline update. There are many recipes for the grid that you can follow up. So let me give you a basic recipe of a grid. Do we have local variables here? Yeah, we have local variables, so we can use this recipe. So let me take a basic one first so that you understand. Let's go to expression mode. I've grabbed this recipe by clicking on the clipboard icon. You can follow the same. Just clear the previous code and paste the current code. As it says, let's start from scratch. A-bank local variables. A-bank local variables is nothing but a definition of the data which you want to showcase in the grid. So what is that? It is, if we see the data type of local bank items, we can see that it is nothing but a list of dictionary. Now, how do we identify that it is a dictionary? Because it is having, first thing, it is a list because it is in a curly brace. Second thing, it is having each item as a variant type, like with respect to key values, key and the values. And it is not on a particular thing like it is only a string or it is only a number. It is of multi-variety data type. So that is a dictionary here. This is a list of dictionary. Now this data is ready to be utilized in the grid. Till now, I hope you understand. In the grid layout. Now in the grid layout, what do we have? We are having a bank grid layout. So if you see on the top, that's what we discussed, a bank grid layout. So we are actually seeing the practical implementation of a bank grid layout for editable grid. So let's collapse this section and see the output. So as I told you, products will be the label. So that is why there is a configuration called products. So let me modify it as per my configuration. The label, whatever we define, it comes as a heading here. Instructions, it is a supplementary text. Don't forget to subscribe and like. So this is a supplementary text. Now header cell. Header cell is nothing but configuration of heading of the columns that you want to populate. Now as a developer, you have to decide how many number of columns you are having in your projected grid and what will be the heading of them. So in my imagination, let's assume that I coded this entire code, and in my imagination, I coded for four items, four or five items. The first one is item, second one is quantity, third one is unit price, and fourth one is total. Other than defining the heading, we can also do alignment. So as you can see, there is a alignment property inside this function. If you go here, it is like label, help, tooltip, align, and show when. So show when, like, do you want to make a column or do you want to make a heading visible on a basis of particular condition? One second. So yeah, I was telling you about the alignment. So the alignment is properties for individual columns for the headings, right? Heading means like this is what that's what you are coming on the top. So align right. So if I make it align center for the other ones, let's see, just focus on this heading part. So now this configuration defines that it is align center. So you can do your own implementation of alignments and what you have to do as per your projected code. Unit price, label unit price, and then we are like planning for align center. Okay, a label unit price, okay, missing comma. In the above, we missed a comma. Now everything is fine. So as you can see that there are different ways to design your grid. Depending upon your configuration, what you have to do, you can plan your implementation. Now if we collapse this, we can see the property of rows, right? We can see we are having the property of rows and we are having the row header as one. So inside the rows, as I told you, this rows defines how you are configuring each row, how you are looping. So if I collapse this, you can see there are two grid row layouts. If I comment one, there will not be the last row. If I uncomment this, this will be the second row. And if I copy this and if I paste it again, there will be another row with the third item. So right now we are not using for loop, but in real scenarios, real-time scenarios, we are having for loops for calling this grid row layout for every item in the list. So here, just for the explanation, Appian has provided a simple documentation that for the grid row layout. So let's understand the first grid row layout. So in the grid row layout, you can see that we are having the contents field. Inside the contents, we are having a text field for the first column and another text field for second column, another text field for the third column, but a fourth is also a text field, but it is read only. So as you can see, first local bank items first index dot item, that is item. We are fetching item one. Then we are having second as integer field, third as floating point field. Okay, they are providing floating point field as quantity, and then price. And the fourth is a bank currency that they are defining here, total value as currency in dollars, and then it is read only. That's something to focus. So as you can see in the grid row layout, we are having this same code repeated for the second index to index the second item in the list. So as you can see that this grid row layout is the main layout which is used to populate the data. The number of times the grid row layout iterates is directly proportional to the number of times that you will see the grid rows having populated being with the data. So this grid row layout is something that we have to focus upon. In the next lecture, I will be showing you how to dynamically iterate with your data using for loop inside the editable grid. Till now, it is easy for us to understand that what is grid row layout, and a grid row layout contains the list of those input fields, and the count of those fields will be equal to the count of those columns that you have configured in the header cell. So if you notice on the top, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 columns configuration like as a header. There are four headers. So for four headers, how many columns we are having in the value is the grid row layout? One, two, three, and four. So as you can see, there are four column values and four column headers. So this is the magic of grid row layout and how grid row layout is used inside grid layout to populate an editable grid. You can control the visibility of a particular field by making it as read only. So if I make it as read only as true, then you can see that the floating point field will also become read only for a particular item. Now this is not at column level because I'm not using loop. I may explain you in a better way, in a bit a better example in the tomorrow's session. Till today, let's understand what is grid row layout and what is grid layout and how editable grid is implemented in Appian. So this is a basic example of editable grid. Drop a like if you really understand my explanation and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you.